Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Sadlier School Live. My name is Camberly Woods, and I'm so pleased to be bringing back Sarah Ressler-Wright, aka Vocab Gal. Hello, Sarah.
Hi, Kimberly.
Sarah is an amazing educator who's also been writing for us over on our blog for the past almost 10 years now, right, Sarah?
Actually, more than 10. No, it is 10. You're right. Sorry.
Crazy. Well, time has flown.
It's fine.
We are going to be talking today about a topic that is really timely because we are wrapping up Poetry Month, which was the month of April. And last week was actually William Shakespeare's birthday, or the day that we recognize as his birthday. And so it makes it a really good time of year to be celebrating William Shakespeare and reviewing his work with your high school students. Right, Sarah?
Right. And you can see I even have him in the background looking over us.
I just want to remind everybody who's watching with us live or catching the replay to go ahead and drop a comment to us. Tell us you're there. Say hello. We'd love to connect with you. And any of the resources that we're talking through today, we will be sharing in the chat here on Facebook Live, so you can access all of those links right there. So Sarah, let's go ahead and pull up the blog post. This is a recent post we published on our blog for Shakespeare, and let's walk through it.
Great. Thanks, Kimberly. So I love Shakespeare. I also love diverse texts, and there's a lot to be pulled out and studied with Shakespeare. There's a lot to be studied with current disrupting texts. I understand both of those as we play together. Shakespeare's language is just a lot of fun, though. And so really, when we're looking today, I want to make sure that people understand that this is not to be done in isolation. But at the same time, it is good for developing brains. It is helpful so that we know how to study language in lots of different capacities. And really, I love what Tiffany is saying here. Tiffany is a longtime colleague of mine, very active in NCTE. And you'll notice here, she likes to say, why do we still study Shakespeare? All's well that ends well, which is a great quote of Shakespeare, but there's so much in our language that comes from Shakespeare, and there's so much play that we can learn from and write with. I also know that it's hard right now to be teaching students Shakespeare when they're not in our classrooms and we can't kind of break down every line with them. And that gets anxiety ridden. And so I want to give you some fun activities to do with students so that they aren't intimidated. I was always very intimidated by Shakespeare. In high school, I didn't know what was happening. In college, I didn't know what was happening. And finally, I went and did a summer abroad, and I had to do a Shakespeare class where it was just myself and a professor every week. And so I had to study a couple of Shakespeare plays every week. And I got to go see them in England all the time, because they do a bunch of Shakespeare in the gardens of Oxford College. And it wasn't until I had repeated exposures that I really understood Shakespeare. And so I also always stress to my students, if you don't get it the first time, that's okay, but you have to have that repeated exposure. You have to work with your brain and kind of keep clicking that on. And so now when we go see Shakespeare in the park in the summers in Columbus, it takes me a minute, but then my brain kind of reminds itself how to hear Shakespeare. And so I'm bringing my own students and my own children along so that they get multiple exposures, because that's how you get it, right?
Wow, I didn't realize you spent so much time in-depthly studying William Shakespeare's work.
Yeah, and I really didn't know what I was doing for a lot of it.
A lot of people can relate to that. If you're one, right, let us know.
Right. Well, and I don't want teachers too, I think, are often intimidated by Shakespeare just because the students roll their eyes and it can become this whole thing. So the more that we play with it, and I have a lot of colleagues who also work with the Folger Shakespeare Library in DC, which is amazing, and the Royal Shakespeare Company in England, which does amazing, really bringing students into the text. We can't do that as much right now because they're not in front of us, but we'll do the best that we can. So first, kind of the idea that how Shakespeare continues to influence students. And there's lots of places we get phrases that we say a lot. And so I love this. This is super helpful. I know that sophomores traditionally study Julius Caesar. You may not want to do the whole play right now. Kimberly, do you want to study Shakespeare's Julius Caesar for the next 5 weeks? No, you don't. And I actually, this is a full confession this week, my college Shakespeare professor his daughter actually was in my sophomore English class.
Really?
Yeah. And his wife, also a Shakespeare professor. So they're double Shakespeare professors in the household. And we did Julius Caesar in 2 days.
So were they testing her when she got home to
I still apologize to the doctors, Brindle, because I feel like, did we do a disservice to Shakespeare? I don't think so necessarily, because this really kind of is the heart of Julius Caesar, this funeral oration. And when you kind of hear it out loud, and I always encourage students to actually listen and make sure that they are kind of hearing it out loud. So in some way, getting the audio for it. I know that Hoopla and this, because it's Shakespeare, it is public domain. So there should be lots of great audio for this clip. So definitely have the students listen to it. And then they have to sort of figure out, what is he saying? Because he's really throwing some shade in a very interesting way. So you also want to kind of appeal to students and say, hey, how is he throwing shade? What's he really saying? Who is he throwing shade at? And why? And so this could be a lot of fun.
Also, the idea of incorporating some terminology like shade to kind of make it more interesting for them as well.
Right. My other favorite thing, although the reference is getting a little dated now, is I always say that Julius Caesar says this phrase. He says, "I and danger are 2 lions whelped in one day, and I am the elder and more terrible." And I say, doesn't that sound like Chuck Norris? Because Chuck Norris says, the river was in my path, so the river jumped out of the way. I mean, it is danger and I are 2 lions. I am the elder. So throwing up some Chuck Norris memes along with Julius Caesar, I think is how to do this. So, and then of course the other one that seniors and so many people can have some fun with is Hamlet's monologue of to be or not to be and why. And there's lots of really interesting quotes that are pulled from this. Slings and Arrows is, a title of a TV show in Britain, and lots of other interesting titles that are pulled from this, and see if the students can get some of the references from throughout the 20th century and beyond that involve this to be speech.
Quick question, Sarah. I know a couple weeks ago on Sadlier School Live, we walked through how to digitally hack a PDF like this for someone who might not have a printer or they're out of paper or ink. Would this also be a download that would work for that, even though it's like a bigger writing block there on the side?
Absolutely. And the other nice thing that I've had a lot of teachers do is you can kind of have students in their reply box to you simply take the lines, because this is intimidating for someone to do it all. So say, okay, find the 10 lines that you understand, copy those, and literally students can copy them, and then in a reply chat box, in a Google document, in somewhere, they can type in their translation. So, and that's the other nice thing about Shakespeare. This works great as a hack. You can also just go online, and because it's public domain in the Gutenberg Project and lots of places, you can find these lines.
Yep, cool. I'll link to that video that we did in case people are interested in checking it out.
Awesome, thank you. And then this would be a really fun one to hack, just because they can type it right underneath. So what is he saying in "Love all, trust a few, do wrong to none"? I think students can feel that, and these are nice little aphorisms for them to take to heart, hopefully too. I do love this one. A fool thinks himself to be wise, but a wise man knows himself to be a fool. And I feel like that all of the time. The more that I learn, the more I realize how much I don't know. So these are super fun, these miscellaneous Shakespeare quotes. And what is it really saying? As soon go kindle fire with snow, as seek to quench the fire of love with words. No, you don't want to date that person. They're not good for you. So again, if you can translate it into more student speech, if you can do things in a way that appeals to the students, and how would you tweet this? How would you say this to your best friend on a text? Doesn't that be capitalized? Doesn't that be formal? How would you say it?
Yeah. Do we dare ask them to do it all in emojis?
That would be great.
Yeah. Only emojis. You must text someone.
Exactly. So I love this. And then, so those are, again, I want to celebrate Shakespeare, his birthday, poetry month. And nothing says fun like a good old insult when talking Shakespeare. And so what you want to do here, and again, I know students have a lot of fun with these. You may have already done them in a classroom before, but this, again, it's a good download hack. It's a really quick, fun thing to do that isn't going to take up much time, that's going to appeal to students. And go ahead and do some insults. Obviously, we want to make sure that you're not insulting anyone in particular in your class, but creating some super fun and interesting insults. Because thou frothy sheep biting bear whelp, what's more fun than that?
It's very fun to be able to get creative with your insults like that. I think it's a really fun spin on it for the kids.
And again, because they have this other sheet of downloads that they can see a lot of these great words in, they can use these phrases, and here there's a little bit of shade being thrown. So how do you literally throw shade with some fun words from Shakespeare?
Yep. I'm going to drop direct links to those downloads into the chat on today's chat. I've already dropped a link to the blog post we went through, and also that video on how to digitally hack a printable PDF for all of those who are interested in seeing it. So Sarah, do you have anything else to say about William Shakespeare before we wrap up?
Well, is he William Shakespeare or is he not, is always, the question we still grapple with today. But I would say to teachers, to administrators, don't be afraid of Shakespeare right now. However, don't overdo it. You don't have to read the whole play. You don't have to study everything. Pick out a couple fun scenes, do the fun activities with them, make sure that they're listening or watching. Shakespeare was not meant to be simply read, but really meant to be performed and watched performed. So the more different learning modes you can access when studying Shakespeare, even in such an interesting time, the better. And that's really always my advice for Shakespeare is play with it, have some fun with it, make your connections to today, and just love Shakespeare for what he's saying. And then also, look at those modern texts. There's lots of modern texts that connect to Shakespeare and have similar themes, and ask students, what themes are you reading in your own independent work that match what you're seeing in Shakespeare? So that's my advice. And I love questions. So please, on Twitter, I am at VocabGal, and I'd love to hear questions from people. And if we get more on our chat, we can always discuss them at another time.
Yes. And Laura, thank you for joining us today. We saw that you said hello here on Facebook Live. It's always a pleasure to connect with you. And as a reminder, we will be back tomorrow at 3:00 p.m. Eastern Time, 12 o'clock Pacific, and we hope to see all of you there. So have a wonderful day, and thanks, Sarah, for being on the show today.
Happy to be here.
Bye.